Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Exclusives, Getting to the Soul of Business, limited series of my Think Business podcast. I'm looking forward. I spend these interviews really taking a little bit more of a deep dive versus my daily live shows, which are about, anywhere between, 18 and 20 minutes. And I do that because I think clients, and I shouldn't say clients, people, whomever is listening, they just sometimes want a deeper perspective of things. And one of the things that I think requires a lot of new perspective is virtual assistants. I have our guest today is Jeff J. Hunter, who has been a huge resource for my business. I am a business coach. I work with solopreneurs to Fortune 100 companies and everything in between, salespeople, C-level execs, leaders, managers, etc. A ton of one-on-one coaching, keynotes, workshops, trainings, etc. But one of the things I could not do, I could not grow my business to the global company it is without virtual people. And it has been a great way for me. Here I sit I have an office in Birmingham, Michigan. I also have an office at my home. And since COVID, 95% of my business, I should say 90% of my business is via Zoom and with clients all over the world. And I'm able to do a ton of work because I have virtual people. And when I talk to virtual people about getting virtual assistants, there's less hesitancy today than there was for sure a year or two ago. But I wanted to have Jeff on the show to talk not only about his business, but also how he got into the business and just kind of dive deep into his profile. But I got to start by saying, Jeff, your team has been incredible, right? Your team has been incredible. I have 8 virtual people, and your team is one of those 8. And you guys run my entire podcast, which, to give people a little bit of insight, I have a daily live podcast. And during the pandemic for a year, I was doing about 9 shows a week. And your team was running everything behind the scenes, guest communication, getting people links, organizing all of it, taking my web show and turning it into a podcast. They were incredible. Anyway, I've talked longer than I've ever talked for any intro before I've even let my guests speak. But VAstaffer.com has been a huge resource for me. And I'll say this too, Jeff, before I give you the mic. Your team does about 50 hours worth of work for me of everything that I never want to do, don't want to do, and shouldn't be doing. And so I think it's really important as everybody kind of listens today to Jeff and I and what Jeff has to share. You really got to take a look. And I say this as a business person and as a business coach. You have to look at every single thing that you are doing and determine what you can and should delegate. So you can spend 80, 90%, maybe even more on the things that you should be doing to grow your business. You should not be, if you're charging, for example, $200 an hour, $500 an hour, $1,000 an hour, $1,500, whatever your time is worth, you should be delegating everything under that, or a good 80, 90% of it. Jeff's team can help you do it. Anyway, Jeff Hunter, it's great. It's great to see you. Welcome. You've been on the show before, and we'll link to it from this show. But I really believe in VAs are a great way to grow a business. So welcome to the show. My first question to you is this. Right? My first question to you is this. Why, I just said a bunch of stuff, but why use a VA? To the person who's thinking, I need somebody in my office. I need somebody in my office. It's just not going to work. Why a VA?
Well, first off, I think that...
Hey, Jeff, turn up your volume a little bit.
Turn up my volume a little bit here. Let's see if I got that here. All right. How about that?
Hopefully perfect. Yeah, great.
Well, the first thing to recognize is it's very important for you to know that, we only have one finite resource in life, which is time. Right? You can always make more money. You can always, find more people. You can always buy more stuff. But it's impossible to go back today, this is the youngest that you and I will ever be for the rest of our lives.
I'm going to be 50. I'm going to be 50 this year. How old are you?
I'm going to be 40 this year.
Okay.
So I'm catching up.
40 seemed to me like it was yesterday and 20 years ago, right? And it's like it's 40s are great. I loved my 40s, and I'm gonna love my 50s. But yeah,
I recently went to the Consumer Electronics Show, and I got a little cold afterwards. And my mom, who is really a Star Trek geek, and her and I used to watch every Star Trek going back, and she used to love one of the series was called Star Trek Voyager. And
I remember Star Trek Voyager. Yeah.
You remember the Doctor? You remember the Doctor? He was a hologram.
Oh yeah.
Robert Picardo. Well, my mom was bugging me for days about getting checked out, making sure I didn't have COVID, this and that. My mom's a nurse, and I did take a negative COVID test, so that was good. But then, I was like, you know what would be really fun? And we live in this amazing world, and this goes to what you were saying. Why virtual? I was able to do this virtual. I was able to hire Robert Picardo to play the Doctor and actually give my mom a video saying, "Hello, I'm looking for Lisa Hunter."
Yeah.
And he literally played his part as the Doctor in Star Trek.
Through what, like Cameo or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
And literally was like, just wanted to let you know that your son went to see. Yes, he got very sick, but he's ready to report and be picked up from sick bay.
Yeah, that's great. That is great.
She was loving it, right?
Yeah.
We live in such an interconnected world, and he had mentioned on that video. Funny you say that. He had mentioned that back in the day when he was doing that character on Star Trek, that he was living an incredible life in his intrepid 40s, is what he said.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the huge reason why I think it's so important to leverage a virtual assistant or a virtual team in general. Is just because for us, we only have so much time in the day, and I think that so many times, at least from you, I think you and I both had a corporate background in the past. For me, I spent many of my years, I used to work in the public sector as an IT coordinator for a school district, and then I became an IT project manager for a Fortune 500 company. And those years went like this. I mean, it's hard to believe, though I don't even remember things from those years. That wasn't even that long ago. I'm almost 40. Those were pretty much my entire 30s was doing that. And it's mind-boggling to think how much I've been able to accomplish just in the past 4 or 5 years on my own as an entrepreneur, compared to the 10, 15-year tenure of getting to where I was. And every year is getting bigger and bigger because I've duplicated myself. I've been able to replicate myself, and I have people that manage my presence so that I can be in many places at the same time. The duplicity, right? I think the replication factor is the biggest solution that having a virtual team solves.
Yeah, I love it. And so let's get into some granular things, right? So what can a virtual assistant do for somebody, right? So, whether you're a solopreneur, whether you are running a business with 30, 40, 50 people, 100 plus people, 1,000 plus people, 5,000 people, managing 10 people, like what can a virtual assistant do?
Bottom line, the first thing that I always recommend people to do, and this is going to be, I'm actually releasing a book this year too. I'm very excited about it.
We'll have you back on the show. Yeah, we'll talk about it. What's it going to be called?
It's called Virtual Teams That Work: How to Manage a Remote Team in the Work from Home Economy.
I love that. I'm writing a new book right now too.
Okay. Well, I'm going to
Mine is called I Will Teach You How to Grow Your Business, Overcome Resistance, Get Unstuck, and Think Big.
Simple.
Yeah. Volume one, time management. There's going to be seven volumes to the series.
Well, that's interesting, because that was the first thing I was going to say. Is the first thing that I would do when you hire your first virtual assistant is to start looking at someone to help you manage your calendar, get your emails in place, hold yourself accountable. Even if all you did was hire someone to do those 3 things. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're listening to this right now,
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, we all know that no one's accountable for yourself. It's only
Right.
you. You're
Yeah.
the only person,
100%.
right? So when you have an assistant who's bugging you saying, boss, what are we doing for the day? Here's what your schedule looks like. Jacqueline was the one who emailed you right before saying, hey, I noticed
Yeah.
that this is a podcast interview, but it was my link. Should we get on your link? You said, here, I'll send you that link.
Yeah.
How much brain space does that save me? Right?
Yeah.
It's tons
Ton.
and
Well,
tons of
that's the thing that I think people, Jeff, and I want to talk on this. People are so used to using their brain for so many things that they shouldn't be using their brain for, and so you know, delegating is one of the most difficult things for people, letting go of that control element of things. And so talk about that as far as how to begin, how you guide your clients to begin to let go.
So
I just want to say one thing too. So like I interview somebody for, just to give an example, right? So I have a daily podcast, right? I do a live web show that then your team takes and puts every day on my podcast, right? And so I do it, but they name the episodes. I don't name the episodes. I mean, when I interview them, I don't listen to them again, right? There's very little editing. They take the episode. I'm just loading it up on my phone.
That's better
Right.
than what I do. I gotta learn what you're doing.
All right. So here's what I do. I do the interview. Okay. And I do the interview, and then I download it I do the interview on StreamYard. I download it once it's done, and then I put it in Dropbox, right, under the month and date that I did it. And then they take it and they they add an intro, they add an outro, they create a title and put all the show notes and everything for every podcast platform. And so it's great. So I think some people would want to be in charge of what they name it and what they do. It's like, I don't care. Like, they do a great job, right? So it's like, I just today's episode, for example.
I'm going to cut you off here because I think you've actually just said something very important that most people don't understand, or they're not willing to admit.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of times people will they will stop themselves from moving forward in something if it's not 100%. And I think that what you've just identified is that maybe not all the titles they come up with are the best, but they're, even if they get to 80%, right? You might make a change here or there or whatever.
I've never made a change. Because it doesn't matter if with the word I use or the word that people, I mean, they do a great job. My point is they do a great job of titling. I've never changed one title. And so what I
usually do is I'll have a podcast guest on, and then that's the one thing that I'll do is I'll give them a title.
Yeah, I don't give them a title. And they just do it all. And then they send emails like, thank you for being on the show. Here's the links to the show, da.
Yeah. So I think going back to your original question is how do you get people ready to delegate and things? Yeah. So first off, you want to just make sure that you understand what the heck you're doing. There has to be a goal. There has to be a process. One thing John is really good at is he's good at putting together some instructions. You got to put some instructions together so that people understand what they're supposed to do. The worst thing you can do is hire someone and say, well, I'll figure out what they're going to do after I hire them. That's the biggest mistake that I think people make when they hire somebody is they don't know what they're going to do. So
I want to talk about that. I created with one of the people that I work with, KP, we created an 8-page specific document of every single thing with links, with verbiage, with videos. And then we had a conference call with your team and your team's kind of project manager and went over everything in detail. So nothing got lost in translation. And the one mistake that they made out of the gate was my fault because it wasn't in the document. So when I said to them, hey, why didn't you guys do this? They said, well, we didn't know to do that because it wasn't in the document. And so and I've been working with you now, I think a couple of years. And so it's if you just got to your point, take the time to educate.
And it doesn't take a lot of work. I mean, you could just
No.
you can open up Zoom and record a quick video, right? And show people something.
Correct. It's easy. Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times people don't delegate because they get that like analysis paralysis, they call it, where it's like, okay, I don't know how to do it, so I just don't do it. I don't want to do it wrong.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is you just record a video what you're going to do. So I'm going to give you a little example. I came prepared. I'm going to give you an example of some of the things that my people do for me. And Jacqueline specifically, who we were just talking about, who even helped coordinate this podcast together. Right. So Jacqueline does my calendar coordination. She schedules podcasts. She follows up. If someone's running late to a meeting, she sends them an email for me without me asking, because she knows that 5 minutes after the call, if they haven't showed up, we send an email.
Yeah.
So we have a little process list, right? So setting up like, hey, when does she need to do something? What is a daily to-do list? So she actually manages my LinkedIn inbox as well. So I get a lot of messages. I just saw today I had someone attempt to book me for yet another call. And someone was referred me some business. So actually what ended up happening was, so my assistant knows if someone refers business that she'll actually send them a calendar link, and then she'll put down on a little spreadsheet like, hey, follow up with Vinny. Vinny Fisher is one of my friends and clients who is really cool in the CFO space. And he refers people to me. And I always send him an email saying, hey, you sent me this referral. I just want to let you know I appreciate you. And then I also update him on the status of what happened with that client. If it worked out, it wasn't a good fit or whatever, just so he knows, right? Like just that type of space right there. She checks my emails for me 1 hour before I even wake up, because see, I get overwhelmed when I wake up. The first thing I do is I reach over and I grab my phone, like most people, and my phone's got a million notifications. So she helps me with that notification hell or notification overload, and does my email, sorts through it, picks out the top 3 or 4 things that are important to me. I mean, just that alone, and coordinating the emails and sending me updates and says, hey, you have a meeting with John in 5 minutes and things like that. I mean, there's just so many different things that you could leverage your own personal assistant for. We haven't even got into social media or video editing or graphic design or making actual connections for you on LinkedIn and start building relationships.
Let's talk about all that. Let's go into a smidge of detail about some of that, because I think people, I think people think, well, how are they going to have my voice? How are they going to know what emails not to delete? How are they going to know my voice to respond to an email, right? All of that.
Well, one of the things that's important to know is that you are not always going to have the perfect SOP, and things are going to come along. So what you need to have is open dialogue, so that you can say, hey, look, this is the type of email that I like. This is the type of email that I don't like. And this is a spam email, and this isn't spam email. And so Jacqueline's been my personal assistant now for 3 months, and she still gets it wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
She still gets it wrong. Like I can see, is there a way I can share my screen on here?
What are you trying to share? I think I can try.
I want to share a message that she sent me with some emails that are, potential clients.
Let me see. I know I can share my screen. I can't share your screen.
Let me see if I can try sharing mine. Let's see. Let's try. I'm going to see. Oh, I got it. I think, let me know if that'll work for you.
Oh, yeah. It did. Hold on. So let me see.
All right. Yeah. So this is
how'd you do that?
I just clicked on the share screen button and it said window, and I clicked on the.
I didn't know you could do that. That's great. Okay, good. All right.
So this is Discord. Okay. So Discord, this is actually our messaging platform, and you can see here that she reminded me at 12:56, right before our call here, that I have a meeting in 5 minutes. And I said, oh, it's actually a podcast interview. And then I asked her how she's doing. And then I said, oh, and then she goes, hey, he sent me a link via email. Here's the link to join this thing, right? But here's a really interesting thing back to the emails that we were just talking about. So she sends me a message this morning at 8:30 a.m. and says, hey, here's a potential client. And he says, hey, I'm launching a massive social media platform, interested in what you're doing. And she did not know that that was spam. So I actually sent her a message saying that's spam. So it's kind of like,
You got to learn. Right.
it's an algorithm, right? It's like the humans and computers are very similar when it comes to the brain function. They learn over time. And here's the
Yeah.
other beautiful thing about why I love hiring people is because unlike my computer or whatever, my car that depreciates in value over time, when I hire somebody and I start teaching them, the first day I hire them, they're the least valuable that they will ever be.
Yeah.
They're only going to get more value as they learn and they grow, right?
I love it. I love it. So tell me, all right, so let's go into more detail about what people can use a VA for, because I really do think it is endless, right? Let's start with video. To me, video is now, video is the future. So let's talk about video
So,
editing.
obviously,
Yeah.
I have my own creative team at VA Staffer. So we obviously, even with you, and we help do video editing, and we can do like trailer videos for podcasts and things like that. I don't know if I would call those virtual assistants per se. I mean, they're on my virtual assistant team, but they're really creative people. And they get paid more than the virtual assistants typically. Because and by the way, you don't have to hire us to do that. You can go on Fiverr and find good video editors and things like that, Upwork, things like that. For me, I don't hire freelancers. I'm anti-freelancer, and I shouldn't say I'm anti-freelancer. Freelancers come in handy for certain things, especially in artists. Like when I'm coming up with a design for something, sometimes I like to hire a bunch of different artists and see like whose vision I like more and what aligns with what I want to do. But in all reality, the people that I need to rely on, I hire full time. I only hire full time, and the reason why is because I want to make sure that they're reliable and they're dependable and they're consistent. And when you work with freelancers, they're usually not consistent. They're definitely not as reliable, and they are juggling multiple clients. So you're never their full priority, right? So that's why all the people that I hire at VA Staffer, they're dedicated team members. They work on my podcast, The Savage Marketer. They work on your podcast. They work on my client stuff. And I know that they're going to show up to work and they're going to do consistent results, right?
Yeah.
So there's a trade-off. Sometimes the freelancers, they can do, a kick-ass job, but they're not as reliable. For me, what I've learned is that I'd rather have someone that functions at 70, 80%, but that I can count on them and rely on them. And that to me is the most valuable thing in a person, is the reliability and commitment.
Yeah. Let's talk about making calls and sales calls and prospecting on LinkedIn and things of that nature. How does that work?
So sales calls is usually the hardest one. And the reason why is because I call it the golden voice. If you hire someone who is good at sales, that's also a double-edged sword. They're good at sales, they don't usually last that long because they're good at sales. So what I do is I actually hire people to do all the legwork and the groundwork. So for example, I'll put together a messaging campaign. So I give like a simple, hey, here's an example of one that I'm actually just about to launch the end of this month, is I'm going to go back out to people that had commented and liked and maybe messaged me about a virtual assistant over the past 6 months, but hasn't either booked a call or maybe booked a call, but it didn't turn into a sale.
Yeah.
We're going to go back to those people and we have a campaign set up to say, hey, how's your 2022 shaping up? Are you looking at leveraging a virtual assistant this year? Is this the year, right, to stop being your own secretary? Or I might even say something sarcastic, because anyone who knows me knows I'm sarcastic. And I might say, hey, is 2022 the first year you're going to stop being your own secretary?
Yeah.
Right? I might say something like that.
Yeah.
And then I'll put together a couple things to just try out and test. And I'll have my assistant, Jackie, go into my LinkedIn account, pull up the list of the people that said, hey, I'm interested. We actually have a spreadsheet that we keep of people that contact me saying that they're interested. And then she can go up there and message them. If they do say that they're interested, we send them a calendar link to get on the call with Julio. As you know, Julio, my guy.
That's great.
And then, and if sometimes they'll want to have a call with me, And if it makes sense, it makes sense depending on the budget and how fast they are to move. I'll just call them. So there's one way to leverage your team on LinkedIn to do that. Another thing you can do is you can actually put together a hit list of people that you'd like to work with, right? Or in your case, maybe you want to have them on your show, because I know you use your podcast to do marketing and start building relationships. So who are the top 50 people that you'd like to have on your show this year? And then they identify those people on LinkedIn, and they can start liking and commenting on their stuff, right? Not even sending them a connection request. Just start liking and commenting on their stuff.
Yeah.
And then after a week or two, you can send a connection request. Hey, been loving the content you putting out, or hey, love whatever. And the same can go for anyone on here who doesn't have a podcast or wants to be featured on someone else's podcast. You could literally do the same strategy on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever to start commenting on those people's podcasts and liking their stuff and adding value. And then send over the message, send over the DM saying, hey, really love your show. Excited to learn more about it. I happen to know a little bit about virtual assistants and delegation. I wonder, John, if your clients might find that valuable to learn how to delegate to a virtual assistant. If I come on your show, I'll share 3 tips, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Right? I love it.
And who has time for that? Not me.
No, not me. No, I mean, it's like, and I think it's interesting. I think, there's a trust element too. And then there's a forgiveness element like you're talking about. It's like, hey, they're going to make mistakes. The person you hire in your office is going to make mistakes. I agree. It's like anything you don't want to do. I compare VAs and having a team that works for you. Like, Frank Sinatra was known for, I call it, being Frank Sinatra, because he wanted to show up, walk on stage, sing, walk off, and he had a team to do everything for him.
That's right.
Right. That's what VAs will do. Let's talk a little bit about you. We've gone in deep about what a VA can do and why people should use them. You've been in corporate America. You have, started this company. What was it about corporate America that was really kind of itching you to start your own gig?
You know what? I loved corporate America. I'd still be there right now if they gave a damn about me. I loved it. I loved my job. I loved the power. I loved the responsibility. I loved the people that I worked with as the project manager. One of the problems.
What do you mean care about you?
Well, that's when things started falling apart. And back in February of 2015, my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Hey, sorry to hear that.
And that was tough.
Yeah.
That was really tough. And at the time, I was actually pretty devastated to learn that he wouldn't even live until Christmas of that year. And I reached out to my boss. And, when you work at a big corporation, it's a cross matrix organization. So you have 2 bosses.
Yeah.
You have an operations manager, and then you have like a regional manager, right? So I reached out to both my bosses, and I asked them, I said, hey guys, I moved up to Portland to take on this opportunity 3 years ago. We talked about, basically having a stint of, let's say, 2 years or so, and then I could go back. We're reaching 4 years now. And my dad's been diagnosed with cancer. He's probably not going to make it. I want to go back and spend time with him. I will personally move down to California, and I'll still do everything in the region. I'll even finance the travel or whatever I need to do, because I work from home anyway as a remote project manager. And they said no. And that was really devastating for me. And then later that year in November, my grandfather, who I was named after, the J in Jeff J. Hunter stands for Jesse. And when that happened, my grandfather ended up getting valley fever. It's an infection of the lung. It's very unique to this area of Central California where I live. And he also lost 100 pounds and looked like he was going to die. And I said, is there any chance I could go back down to be with my dad and my grandpa?
Yeah.
And they said no. And that was really frustrating for me. By the way, my dad did survive right before this podcast, as you know, my dad called me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's good, by the way. He's
Yeah.
good.
Great. That's great.
Thank God.
Thank
Um,
God. Oh yeah. I'm happy to hear that.
yeah, he, miraculously was restored. Um, thank God for the technology and prayer and everything that's happened. And, my dad, put in a lot of work. He had one of those heart valves that pumped in, chemotherapy for many years. Uh, but now he's got what they call chronic non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which means he will have lymphoma for the rest of his life. But
Yeah.
it's so slow growing that he'll probably die from something else.
Yeah.
Um,
That's good.
So with that said, my grandfather was on his deathbed, and they wouldn't let me go again. And they told me they had no one to replace me. And January came around 2016, and my wife and I were finally pregnant with our second child after trying a long time. And we got up to the 10-week mark, and we did this big announcement on Facebook, and everybody was so happy. We made a little snowman caricatures, and it was like it was snowed so bad in Portland that year. That was 2016. And we had a miscarriage at 10 weeks. And I asked my work to let me take a couple of days off to be with my wife, because she was really going through a lot of emotional stress and trauma. And they wouldn't let me have the day off. As a matter of fact, when they scheduled the surgery to, sadly remove our unborn child there, they flew me to Alaska to a project, and I couldn't be there, and it was just horrifying. And then I thought that they tried to make everything better for me by bringing me in right afterwards, and then offering me a promotion to a project manager 3, which was a 25% pay raise and everything. And I was thinking, you know what? They know they messed up. Maybe they're trying to make things right. Until I realized 2 weeks later, when I got my first paycheck, that what they did was they moved me off the hourly scale to the salary scale, and my paycheck was actually 25% less.
Right.
But I was still expected to work 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. And that was when I started realizing they didn't care.
Yeah.
So it was actually February 29th of 2016. It was on Leap Day, on Leap Year, that I wrote my resignation letter, and I hovered that finger over the send button, and I remember crying and praying and calling everybody I knew to say, "Am I doing the right thing? Oh my God!"
Yeah.
And I left, and I started VA staffer. And I started VA staffer because, as a project manager, I'd hired a virtual assistant to help me doing my own documentation and projects when I worked at Philips. And that was the company, by the way, is Philips Electronics, which, by the way, I have nothing bad to say about them. I know that it was just, poor leadership, management team. That was just poor decisions on their side, especially with looking at what I'm accomplished now. I'm a multi-million-dollar business. I have over 150 people that work for me and run it for me. I have, I think 20 people now on my leadership team, between the squad leaders and the project management team. Like,
right.
I could have done so much for that company.
Yeah.
And I would have been happy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It's I remember I'm sorry that they treated you like that, but it almost was like the universe putting them in place to get you to where you needed to really be, right?
Yeah.
To kind of step into that thing that was waiting for you.
You know what was really interesting? And he doesn't know this, but if he ever does watch this one day, his name's Jim Barklow. He was my boss. Man, I'm breaking down, but he was my boss's boss. And when I left the company, he reached out to me personally, and he said that I made the right choice. My boss's boss.
Yeah.
And he wrote me an incredible recommendation on my LinkedIn profile, which I've hidden. You guys can't see it. I hid it because when I see it, it brings back pain.
Yeah.
And he was just so instrumental. He was the one who told me that I was smart and that I was doing in the virtual assistants and delegation and brainy stuff. That's where we need to go. And he basically told me he doesn't think that the company's ready for it. They can't adopt it.
Yeah.
You know? So that's when I knew I was onto something.
Yeah.
That was when I was like, you know what? I can do this. And, you know, it was a very hard time, John. I left $150,000 almost a year, you know, with compensation and benefits and everything, probably 150 plus a year.
Yeah.
They paid for my car. They paid for my phone. They paid for my computer. They had a credit card for me. I was able to pay $75 a day in food. That's how I got fat.
Yeah.
And to leave all of that, to move in with my grandpa, by the way, who I got to spend the last month of his life with him.
Yeah. Bless him.
And my 3-year-old son, who I named Jesse after him as well. And, you know, that's time that I'll never get back. And it goes right back to the original question that we started the show, which is why hire a VA?
Right.
Because you never get that time back.
You never get time back.
And so I look at myself now. I have 3 businesses, all ran by VAs. I get to do whatever the hell I want, wake up whenever the hell I want, go to sleep whenever the heck I want. And I know that my business is going to be running for me. And, you know, how many people on this earth can say that?
Well, what you're talking about, I appreciate your words, your vulnerability, all of that. You know, it's, and we're seeing this right now with the Great Resignation. We all want to control our time, but more importantly, our freedom, right? And we don't want many people do not want people controlling their freedom, right? As well as their time. And, you know, as you're telling this story, it reminds me, I'm going to be 50 this year. And when I was 23, just graduated college, my brother and I and a buddy started an internet company. So this is now, you know, 27 years ago. And 25, yeah. And so it was right. I mean, when the internet was brand new, wasn't even really a thing yet. 2 years after we started our company, we sold it to the largest internet professional service firm in the world. And we were partners in the company. So started it when I was 23, sold it when I was 25. After we sold it, my mom passed away and I took 2 weeks off. And my grandfather, who lived with us, had recently passed away. And I, after 2 weeks I took 2 weeks off because my mom died. And I had a conference in Washington, D.C. And I accidentally I was in our Washington, D.C. office, and I accidentally walked into this conference room where the guy that I reported to, his name was Bob, was in the room. And I said, "Oh, Bob, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were in here." He goes, "Your numbers have been down the last couple of weeks." So I said, "I know." I said, my mom died. I'm 25. My mom died. I took 2 weeks off. And he looked at me and he said, "Stone cold, your numbers are down." So I thought, oh, maybe he didn't hear me that, you know, so I said, you know, Bob, my mom passed away. And he said, get your numbers up. And so I said, okay, I will. And I remember that moment as clear as, I mean, we're talking 27 years ago. I remember like I could paint it. I remember it so well. And I remember thinking in that moment, you know, selling the company was the best thing that we did. I mean, it was the right choice. I don't regret it. I learned things I couldn't learn in a book.
Wow.
But as amazing as it was, and it was great financially, and it was great, the learning of what I learned, but it was hell having to work for this type of company. And I remember thinking at that moment, I'll never, ever do something in my life where this is the energy, you know, long term. And so, but it was a life-changing moment, which was one of the things that got me to really have the courage, amongst other things I could point to start my own business, this business in my early 40s. My coaching business.
If there's one theme we can leave your your audience with today, is that you're not going to get any younger.
You're not going to get any younger,
Yeah.
right?
And things happen. And I think that, I mean, I'll make sure to share everyone a resource with all the things. I actually made a post. It was like the 100 things that your VA can do. I'll share that.
Yeah, share it, and we'll link to it. But I think also it's about, connecting. What we're talking about too is connecting with your values, connecting with your self-worth, connecting with your soul, aligning yourself with what is important to you. Listen, there's a lot of things within corporate America that are great, and if it works for people, great. But wherever you are, get into alignment, right? I think be in alignment is the message, right? And don't be scared, because there's always something better around the corner. There's always something better around the corner. Let's end on a couple speed round questions, Jeff. Best piece of advice your dad ever gave you?
It wasn't advice. It was making my ass work when I was only 14 years old.
All right, good. I love it.
I think growing up fast is good for kids. And I look at my 9-year-old right now and I think, what a spoiled little brat. So I'm gonna have to put him give him some work.
All right, good. Best piece of advice your mom ever gave you?
Be kind.
Best advice your grandpa gave you? May he rest.
Only dummies work hard.
What'd you say?
Only dummies work hard.
Okay. That's great. Tell everybody how they can connect with you and work with you and your incredible team.
Well, if you want to learn more about virtual assistants, it's vastaffer.com. And John, thank you again for that warm intro. And if you want to learn more just about me, jeffjhunter.com for my personal brand. I'm involved in lots of crazy things, and I genuinely care about people, as you know, John.
Yeah.
This is not our first encounter.
No, this is not. You've been a pleasure to work with. And again, the power of podcasting, I met you because I interviewed you.
Yeah.
And so it's been great. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate your time today. Think community, if you have questions on VA staffer, please reach out to me. We're going to do some cool things with this interview. We're going to post the interview, and then Jeff's going to do some cool things about what his team can do by doing it with this interview. So stay tuned. Jeff, been a pleasure. Thanks to you. And hey, and a shout out to Cece, who's amazing. And Julio, thank you for your support. Jeff, thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeff.